Hey everyone, I'm Catherine Levy. I have created this presentation to help you better understand the five-step process known as the problem-solving approach and how you can use it to better your own writing. I will teach you about this process by showing you how I applied it to my professional website assignment from our technical writing course this past semester. We were instructed to create a site around the profession we are most familiar with at this point in our lives. I chose to center mine around being a professional dancer. First things first, PSA stands for Problem Solving Approach. You'll see and hear me refer to this process as such throughout the presentation. The process helps you to solve your problems by breaking them down into steps. The problem-solving approach helps writers not to have to think about all the elements of their document at once, but instead it presents it to you in parts. More specifically, the problem-solving approach focuses on the whole writing process in order to solve problems in the workplace through using communication. The 5 steps of the PSA are plan, research, draft, review, and distribute. Planning is when you determine what you are writing and your reason for doing so. Researching is when you determine what information is needed, then obtain that information. Drafting is when you compose the initial draft of the document. Reviewing is when you test the usability of the document and seek advice from peers. Distributing is when you get the document to the intended audience. The first step of the PSA is to plan. For my assignment, the first thing I needed to do was determine my reason for writing. I really wanted to create a virtual headshot, or a site that would help me to market myself in my industry. You can see an example of how I chose to market myself in the image included on the slide. The next thing I had to do was decide which medium to use. Besides being required for the project, I knew the website was the best choice because it was easily accessible but yet still professional. The second step of the PSA is to research. During my project, the first thing that I had to determine was the necessary content that would be required for the project. This is when referring to the rubric or any set of guidelines that you may have been given is very, very helpful. The next thing I did was collect and organize the information that was required, which in our case was about, resources, showcase, and tips. Finally, I explored other dancers' websites to see what worked and what didn't. The third stage of the PSA is to draft. Now this is the step when you actually start composing your document. For my project, I had to determine the order of importance within the topics that we were supposed to write about. In other words, which page should be seen first and which should be seen last. You can see this in the top image I've included on this slide. Next, I had to arrange the best visuals that would represent me and my talents, which can be seen in the showcase page, which is in the image on the lower half of the slide. The fourth stage of the process is to review. The reviewing stage is when you test the usability of the document and figure out which parts should be kept and which parts should be deleted. I exposed my site to other dancers to observe how my audience would navigate and respond to it. Also, I used the help of my peers from our peer review groups in our class. Finally, I applied the best suggestions and corrections I had gotten from my peers and my audience to my new document. The last step in the PSA is to distribute. In order to get the word out there about my website, I made it a public site so that anyone could see it. I sent the link to my dance agency so they would be able to send it to potential casting directors or choreographers. And finally, I saved the link in my phone so I would always have it at my disposal so I could also have it to show to potential employers at any time. Using the problem-solving approach to create my professional website was very helpful. It helped me establish a process for creating the site rather than trying to tackle the whole thing at once. It made it much less overwhelming and much more manageable. Additionally, the pre-planning stages helped me to be better prepared when it actually came time to start drafting the site. Finally, the PSA allowed me to create a better, more professional final document. The problem-solving approach has also helped me to learn a few things about myself as a writer. I now know that I often find it hard to remain concise. This is difficult because I've gathered that for the audience, less is more. Another thing I've learned is that I hate the planning process, but it really does help you to create a better final document. Finally, I've learned that I'm very meticulous when it comes to my writing, which can be good to a certain degree, but can also become a fault for me as a writer. Using the problem-solving approach throughout this course has taught me a lot about effective communication as well. Effective communication is being clear when you speak, preparing before you begin communicating, meeting the needs of the audience, keeping the audience engaged throughout the entire communication process, and ensuring that what you are communicating is actually being heard, but more importantly, understood by your audience. Okay, well that wraps up everything I wanted to tell you about the problem-solving approach. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and more importantly, learned something that you can take and apply to your own writing process. Feel free to visit my website at the link below in order to get a better feel of who I am as a professional dancer and to explore more how I used the problem-solving approach to create this site.